All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Lunch Break Apostasies. We decided to go just a little bit earlier this morning. Today, we're talking about the Apostasies having to do with the Dark Lord Sauron. Now, to really understand Sauron, you have to understand some background information concerning him. The story really starts off, of course, at the very beginning when Ero Ilúvatar created the universe. He created essentially two different classes of these spiritual beings. One known as the Valor, those are the greater ones, and then lesser ones known as Maior. You're probably familiar with some of the Maior. The Balrog is a Maior. Gandalf is a Maior. And at the beginning of creation, everything was in harmony until Morgoth, one of the Valor, decided to begin his own song, and thus the beginning of all discontentment, confusion, and destruction within the universe. Sauron was actually one of the Maior, one of those lesser spiritual beings who ends up being seduced by Morgoth into darkness. Now, when Morgoth made war against the good beings, the good Valor end up winning and imprisoning Morgoth. At this point, Sauron was already a lieutenant within Morgoth's army. He managed to escape, and he was somewhere off in the east of Middle Earth, but wasn't seen again for about 1,000 years. When he finally did come back, he came back in disguise as one of the elves. He called himself the Lord of Gifts. He ends up befriending an elf named Celebrimbor and tricking him into forging the rings of power, which were used to try to keep the magical powers in the world. You see, the elves were able to tell that magic was slowly fading. But Celebrimbor, along with the rest of the elves, were deceived. Sauron ended up forging in the fires of Mount Doom a ring for himself. And when he put it on, the intention was to enslave the minds of everyone who had been given a ring. The three most powerful rings have been given to the elves, but they were able to sense the darkness within the rings as soon as the ring of power was placed on Sauron's finger, and they were able to take off their rings before the mind controlling effects could take effect. The ones that were given to the dwarves weren't all that effective either, as the dwarves were pretty much still satisfied to just go mining for more and more treasure. By the way, I am trying to go quickly through this and show us the meaning of haste. I don't want to delve too greedily or too deep. Um, but men, that's where the real corruption came, and that's why 9 of the rings ended up going over to men instead. Most of them were Numenorians who ended up being corrupted by Sauron. But during this war, and actually there were a couple of wars. Most people think there was only one ancient war, but there was actually about 3 of them. Sauron lost, was taken prisoner to Numenor. He ends up convincing the Numenorians to attack the Valor, loses that war, and his physical body is destroyed there. He ends up building himself a new body in Mordor, and that's when he begins the War of the Last Alliance between elves and men. Famously, he lost that war as well, and Isildur cut the ring from his finger, but instead of destroying it in the fires of Mount Doom, instead he kept it for himself, which allowed Sauron to slowly begin rebuilding his forces. And that's really the more famous picture of Sauron we see. But at the beginning, he looked much more like one of the elves. Some of the hierarchy in Sauron's forces, we have the mouth of Sauron. Not much is known about the mouth of Sauron. He was probably a black Numenorian who was corrupted by Sauron. He is described as the top lieutenant of Sauron, and when he is speaking, he is actually speaking for Sauron. Seeing as so much mind control is part of Sauron's MO, I would say he probably doesn't have his own mind anymore. We have the Witch King of Angmar. Again, this is probably a Numenorian. This is one of those 9 men that were corrupted by the rings. Famously, end up destroying was it Angor? The old northern kingdom that was above Gondor. He was pretty important in the destruction of that. Eventually, he was driven back by the Dunedain, but reappeared at the end of the Third Age during the War of the Ring. And then finally, you have Saruman as well. Like Gandalf, he is actually a Maiar, and he was the original leader of the Maiar that were sent onto Middle Earth in order to help those against the dark forces in the world. There was the white wizard Saruman, the gray wizard Gandalf, the two blue wizards, and then the brown wizard Radagast. Um, Most of them ended up going corrupt. We don't really know what happened to the blue wizards. Some say they kind of started their own cult somewhere else. Radagast the Brown, he ends up becoming far too focused on nature. And in the case of Saruman the White, with his mind of metal and gears, he ends up becoming corrupted by Sauron as well. Only Gandalf the Grey, who later becomes Gandalf the White, was able to stand against them. So that's just a quick overview of Sauron. Oh, by the way, I forgot that we're in the habit of mentioning the something good about what we talked about last week. We were talking about the Daedra, and unfortunately, I just don't have anything good to really say about the Daedra. Some say that some of them are good, such as Meridia and Azura, but while they might not be as evil as, Molag Bal or Mehrunes Dagon, they're still pretty evil, unfortunately. To call them good Daedra is not really inaccurate. It's more like a self-righteous type of Daedra. So that's all we have today. April Fools, obviously. The real one will be at noon. I hope to see you then.